Hey there, Mark Armour, Adaptive Business Continuity and Resilience Evangelist here, working to change the way business continuity and resilience are both perceived and practiced, and hopefully providing benefit and delivering value to the organizations that we serve. I'm going to be talking today about measuring outcomes and demonstrating value in business continuity and resilience. I'm going to start by trying to put resilience into a little bit of context. I'm going to begin first and foremost by kind of providing my view or definition of risk and risk management. I hope it aligns with yours. If so, then that means you should be on board with regards to how I'm defining resilience and business continuity in this context. So when we look at organizations, I believe that risk is the effects of uncertainty on organizations and their ability to achieve their objectives or execute on their missions. The risk management function then serves to provide the data and the tools to help organizational leaders make better decisions in the establishment of their strategy and the achievement of their business objectives. So I kind of look at that as kind of the start of the equation, and that equation predominantly is going to be your business operations, right? Your day-to-day business, your delivery of products and services to customers, all of your back office functions with regards to finance and human resources. That all starts by really making the right decisions to set that strategy and establish what business objectives the organization wants to achieve. Resilience kind of then sits at the other end of that spectrum when we look at our day-to-day operations and the work that our resources are doing. There's always the potential in our very volatile, uncertain world for unanticipated changes to occur, right? Or even for anticipated changes to result in unanticipated consequences and impact. And resilience then is a measure of the organization's ability to deal effectively with the consequences of those changes or the consequences of those unanticipated events. So we kind of see risk and resilience kind of sit at either ends of this equation, with business operations sitting in the middle. So that's the context. Again, hopefully that makes sense. The only other thing that I'm going to add is I kind of look at business continuity almost as being a subset of resilience. This is one of those areas where I see a lot of differing opinions. I see a lot of people really kind of rebranding business continuity as resilience, but really I look at resilience as kind of just being the comprehensive approach of the organization to deal with all of the changes that exist within its environment, its market, its industry, and its community. Business continuity is really kind of the tactical part of that. When operations specifically are disrupted, then what are the strategies as well as the capabilities to enable the execution of those strategies to continue delivering products and services and to continue operations at an acceptable level. So having said that, a lot of what I do within the adaptive business continuity world is really to try to change the perception of what business continuity is, and as a consequence, is what resilience is. I think I'm in this world where I'm trying to maybe establish this view or this opinion of what resilience is or what it should be. But in order to do that, let's take a step back and find out, well, how did we get to where we are with regards to how we currently perceive business continuity and, as a result, to some degree, resilience. And it starts many decades ago in business continuity's origins. And business continuity was predominantly started to provide something similar to what IT disaster recovery provides, but with regards to work area. So how do we recover physical workspace, physical operations, if our primary production operation, our primary production workspace is somehow down or impacted. But that was kind of a limited scope, and I think some enterprising consultants many years ago saw fit to kind of expand business continuity's mission to really be not just, well, how do we get back our workspace or how do we get operations back in some other location if it's impacted, to really being all about organizational survival. What are the strategies and the actions that we should take in order to prevent our organization from going out of business? That's a pretty tall order when you think about it. The result of that, though, right, when we think of business continuity through that lens, is that really what business continuity exists to do is to avoid a specific outcome, business failure. The results, right, if we follow this line of reasoning then, is we establish extraordinarily high thresholds for where business continuity and business continuity work and plans and activities all come into play. And these very high thresholds mean that the opportunities and the events that come along that actually allow us to measure the outcomes of business continuity work, allow us to measure and evaluate the effectiveness of business continuity work and business continuity programs, those opportunities are extraordinarily rare. I mean, how many events actually threaten an organization's very existence? They're pretty limited. They're very few and far between. Now, very small organizations probably have to deal with a lot more threat to their operations, but small organizations don't have the resources to dedicate to business continuity and resilience initiatives. But for those organizations that do have those kinds of resources, well, for them, business continuity and resilience really is very limited value, right? Because there's very few opportunities for it to deliver value. In fact, most organizations view it as insurance because it's something that they don't want to have to use, right? They want to avoid the situations where business continuity strategies are going to have to come into play, because that means that the organization's survival is somehow under threat. And as a result, either business continuity is going to fall by the wayside or be ignored because it's not considered, the event they're dealing with is not considered to actually reach that threshold. Or if it does come into play, very often organizations then look back on those events and find out, well, perhaps this event really didn't threaten our existence, and our business continuity activities and programs still provided very limited value or benefit to us. But there's something interesting that's happened over the past couple of decades, and we see this increasing year over year. We see this becoming an increasing area of focus within the business continuity and resilience domains, and I call this compulsory business continuity or compulsory resilience. And this is the establishment of programs and the execution of business continuity and resilience activities in order to satisfy governmental requirements and regulatory expectations around business continuity. This has made business continuity and resilience very much a compliance activity. And what happens is governmental organizations and regulators will not only mandate that business continuity or resilience programs be established, they'll mandate the means by which those programs execute. They'll mandate the actions and the deliverables program managers and leaders and their teams must make in the establishment of their programs and the implementation of business continuity and resilience strategies and capabilities. So the measure then, right, if the opportunities to actually evaluate business continuity programs are extraordinarily rare, then the opportunities to measure programs really just exist in the conformity domain. The only means to measure business continuity and resilience programs is by their conformity with the regulatory requirements or with the existing or prevailing standards at the time. This means that business continuity and resilience measurements, or the measures of business continuity and resilience programs, are not outcomes. They're not the benefits that the organization is actually looking from these programs. It's all measured in output. The plans that are produced, the BIAs that are created, the number of tests and exercises that are conducted, the number of trainings that are delivered. And this creates really an outcome that's very much compliance driven, right? So business continuity programs execute against all of these requirements and these mandates and follow this life cycle under the belief that the completion of all these activities will result in the outcomes and the benefits that we want. But in the eyes of executives and leaders of our organizations, this really all just becomes so much overhead that they must do in order to satisfy the regulators and their auditors, and not something that actually is going to demonstrate value to their organization. And that's where we sit today is this perception of business continuity and resilience primarily as a compliance function, and that the investment that are made into business continuity and resilience should be minimal and only exist again to satisfy the regulatory and the audit requirements that exist. I genuinely believe there is a new way that we can think about this. Now, this is not necessarily a way that's going to satisfy the regulators and the auditors, but it's a way that we can actually start to articulate the value and, I believe, actually start to demonstrate the value of business continuity and resilience. And it starts first by setting a new objective for what we should be doing. Instead of focusing on organizational survival, instead of setting programs that establish a very high threshold for the execution of strategies and the use of business continuity planning efforts, well, let's define business continuity and resilience as providing benefit by reducing the pain that the organization experiences whenever disruptions or losses or changes occur. So when I talk about organizational pain, I'm talking about things that we can measure. In fact, in many organizations, these are things that we're probably already measuring. They are things like costs and expenses. These are things like penalties, regulatory penalties, or customer chargebacks because of either reduced quality, reduced volume, contractual obligations not met. These are things that organizations measure in terms of revenue and sales volumes, customers, new customers gained, customers lost. And of course, things like performance and employee productivity can be measured. And again, any changes in these, we can evaluate or we can illustrate as pain to the organization. Dips in performance or productivity translate into pain for the organization. Obviously, direct costs and penalties and chargebacks and, of course, lost revenue clearly are painful to the organization because they impact the organization's overall objectives and their ability to meet their requirements and their commitments to their stakeholders. But there's another aspect to this that's very easy to miss, and I think this will probably resonate with those of you in the risk management world, where typically risk management is viewed through this lens of negative consequences, of just the threat aspect of risk and not the opportunity aspect of risk. And resilience is very much the same way. What we neglect to consider is that any type of disruption, any type of change in our environment, yes, can negatively impact us and cause organizational pain, but it does also provide opportunities and potential benefits in terms of potential increased customer demand for products and services, increased opportunities to provide more value-added services or to add value to existing products and services, opportunities to create community and customer and employee goodwill. And these, again, are things that we can measure. And the value of resilience, then, is not only building the ability or the capability within the organization to respond effectively and work collaboratively and make the right decisions to minimize the pain and the negative consequences, but also to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that exist. Organizations that are more resilient, thereby have a greater ability to take advantage when customer demand does increase. They have the creativity and the innovation and the agility to be able to quickly reevaluate and maybe repurpose existing products and services, maybe introduce new value-added products and services when these events come along. And even, again, positively engage with their employees and their customers, particularly during bad events, not only to minimize pain, but actually to increase satisfaction and engagement. So these are the benefits. And again, these are or can be measured, right? We can certainly measure when we're able to get more products out the door. We're certainly able to measure when we're producing new value-added services. We can, or we have the ability to measure things like customer and employee satisfaction. I would be remiss if I did not at least acknowledge, right, that anytime there is an event or a change in our environment, there's always going to be some degree of it that's outside of our control. We can't control the degree of impact from some kind of natural disaster. We can't control the reaction of customers and what they may expect or demand following some kind of major disaster or some kind of significant disruption in their environment. And we can't really control the effects or the impacts on the communities in which we operate. Again, all we can do is put ourselves in the best position to be able to respond effectively to whatever the consequences of that change or those events are. And kind of a corollary to that, of course, is anytime there's a change, anytime there's some kind of disruption or impact, then the amount of pain that the organization feels, the amount of benefit that's going to be available is really going to be commensurate with the level of impact experienced. So of course, if you have a 1 hour power outage, level of pain is going to be relatively small. The opportunities or benefit that may exist, if they exist at all, are going to be quite minuscule. If there's a huge natural disaster, if there's some kind of major community disruption, if there's an industry-wide competitor or change, well, now the level of pain that the organization can experience and the opportunities that exist for that organization are greatly expanded. And resilience and the value of resilience, of course, is going to fluctuate depending, again, on the level of that impact and the opportunities that exist and the level of pain that we can experience. So that's kind of a very long-winded way of saying that we should really kind of change our mission and our objective within business continuity and resilience from simply ensuring the organization can survive or ensuring that we can still operate to a certain minimal acceptable level to, well, opportunities exist everywhere for us to minimize pain and take advantage of opportunities that may exist in terms of changes and disruptions in our environment. And that leads me to really kind of the next part of this when we talk about changing our perceptions of business continuity and resilience. And that is, hopefully this is obvious, but it's expanding the scope of where resilience and business continuity can provide benefit from this perception that it's only big catastrophes. It's only the major disasters during which we can actually realize value from our investment in business continuity and resilience programs, to actually realizing that there are lots of situations that organizations go through that result in negative consequences or that result in change that we didn't anticipate, or changes we anticipated but we didn't anticipate the consequences of, and thereby realize opportunities and benefits to both reduce pain and take advantage of opportunities. So these disruptions and changes that can exist in many forms. They are, of course, the obvious, the natural disasters, the acts of terror, the loss of resources. It could be utility outages. It could be equipment malfunctions or losses or damage. It could just as easily be things like mergers and acquisitions. It could be divestitures. It could be the introduction of new products and services. These are things that are always going to be disruptive to our organization. And in many cases, yes, we predict them and we know they're coming, but we're not always that good at anticipating the fallout from these types of changes. And I think organizations that make themselves more resilient realize less pain, less negative consequences, and are in positions to take advantage of the benefits and the opportunities that exist in those changing environments when they occur. So really, the scope of business continuity and resilience then becomes changes of any kind. And before I continue, I think I would be guilty of omitting like just some really, really strong examples here. If I didn't go back to the opportunities that I spoke of that exist whenever changes or disruptions occur. And those opportunities, if I were to use an example, would be COVID-19 and the global pandemic that we've all been going through this past year and a half. And the result of COVID-19 and the global pandemic is, of course, been perceived as extraordinarily negative, but let's also acknowledge that there have been some benefits for some organizations out there. If you're Amazon or any kind of online retailer, you've probably seen sales increase this past year and a half because people are no longer flocking to physical locations to purchase products, but instead turning to their computers and getting them delivered to their door. We see this following even natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes, where organizations that are involved in commercial or residential construction, any type of repair service, any type of organization that provides construction or repair supplies, realize increased business following natural disasters, because of course natural disasters result in physical damage to structures and infrastructure, and organizations that are involved in that type of work benefit. And again, the more resilient the organization, the better they're able to take advantage and actually meet the volume of demand that exists within their markets and within their communities. So that's some examples of the benefits that we could realize if we are more resilient as an organization. So let me kind of bring this to a conclusion. Not a conclusion of the presentation, I still have some more to say, but when we talk about what I first mentioned, which was let's change the mission or the objective of business continuity and resilience, let's expand the scope of what we do, that means that there's a lot more opportunities. Remember again, if our focus is just disasters or those types of events that actually threaten the organization's survival, opportunities are going to be very, very rare and far between. We're going to have to utilize exercises and testing to try to prove out the value of what we do. If, however, we're looking at all sorts of changes and disruptions in our environments and our markets and our operations, well, that provides fertile ground for opportunities to practice. Through practice, we improve our resilience. We can learn. And the people who are involved in the response to these types of events, they're learning. They're getting better and they're understanding more. Well, what does it mean to respond to this type of event? And what are the opportunities that exist in these types of circumstances? That contributes to improved resilience once again. And these are great opportunities to collect data. Again, if we're just waiting for the cataclysmic event, the data that comes out of that, yes, is going to be very, very rich, but we're not going to have opportunities to compare and contrast it to other types of events because the next previous event might have been 10, 15, 20 years in the past. If, however, we're looking at any change in our environment, we have a rich, robust source of data, and we look at data over time. We can compare year over year, month over month, and see what we're doing within the resilience and preparedness spaces. Is it actually resulting in reduced pain? Are we seeing increased benefit as a result? If not, then we should be doing different things. And when we experiment and change and try different changes, we should, again, if we're taking the opportunity to measure in a multitude of scenarios, then we're going to find out relatively quickly if the different steps and actions that we're taking are contributing, again, to reduced pain, to increased benefit. So these are always opportunities to measure pain using the concrete metrics that I talked about: performance and productivity, costs, expenses, chargebacks and penalties, anything of that nature, as well as the benefits. Have we seen maybe increased revenue? Have we sold new products or new services that weren't traditionally in a high degree of demand? Are we seeing greater customer satisfaction? Are we picking up new customers? Do we maybe have a greater degree of employee engagement? These are all things that we should be looking at within our organization, because those are evidence of the organization's overall resilience. And when we can see those improvements, then we know that the things that we've been doing. So if we see those improvements over time, and we can't just do this comparing one event and then another event 3 months later. We're going to have to get really good at measuring the pain and the benefit from a multitude of different changes that we experience within our organizations. But when we start to see improvements over time, we know that the things that we are doing to improve resilience overall are contributing both to the bottom line, but also providing benefit to the organization in a way that we can illustrate and demonstrate its value to the leaders of our organizations. I think I've said most of this already, but I think it warrants maybe diving just a little bit deeper so we kind of understand what we're talking about. And the first thing I think it's important to understand is the benefits of investing in resilience and creating resilient capabilities are going to be cumulative. And I think it's important that we understand, right, that it's going to take the measurement of multiple events over time for us to both be able to measure the benefit that we're realizing from the action and the actions that we're taking, but also that some of our investments aren't going to produce a positive ROI until maybe several events or several changes in, right? When all of those investments now start paying off in terms of improved behavior, we're expanding the scope of what we're doing. So again, we've got more opportunities to practice, more opportunities to learn. Those then create an evolutionary growth in the organization's level of resilience. Again, this might have been obvious, but it's always good pointing out the obvious. It's always good just to kind of repeat some things so it becomes relatively well known. And again, this gets back to what I talked about, increasing our opportunities, because the result of that is not just we're practicing, we're learning, but now our ability to respond and deal with these changing environments becomes much more familiar to us. We actually develop resilient capabilities across our organization as a direct result. And this is where I'm going to tie it back to the presentation that I mentioned earlier by my colleague, Dr. David Lindstedt, who has presented on measuring capabilities within organizations. So if you take the instruction and what he's presented on how you measure the capability that exists within your organization, and you're acting on the improvement of those capabilities, you start to marry that with measurement of outcomes in changing environments, and you actually start to see, well, if I'm investing in these capability improvements, am I seeing improvement in terms of outcomes within my organization? If not, maybe I need to pivot. I need to invest elsewhere. Maybe the things that I'm doing aren't contributing to improvement in capability, and I need to take another action. Maybe I need to focus somewhere else within my organization to realize those improvements. But the takeaway, I think there's an important takeaway here, is this. If we spend less time focused on the compliance activities and the actions dictated by the traditional business continuity life cycle, these are things like business impact assessments, your traditional risk assessment or risk analysis, plan development, scheduling of exercises and recovery tests and training opportunities, if we jettison all that and instead focus our efforts on measurement of capabilities, measurement of outcomes, and again, if we're increasing or expanding the scope of what we do, there's going to be very ample opportunities for us to measure outcomes. Now, the actions that we can take aren't revealed to us through some kind of mandated life cycle. They're revealed through the actions that we're taking in the improvement of our capabilities. They're revealed to us in the form of the measurement of our capabilities and the outcomes that we're seeing when disruptive events and the consequences of changes do indeed occur. I hope that seriously makes sense. If not, I'm going to share some contact information and some other resources for you at the end of this. But let me kind of just summarize by saying that I think where we are going, and I say we, meaning me and my colleague, Dr. David Lindstedt, what we want to do is we want to take the guesswork out of organizational resilience. We want to take this regulatory or standards mandate out of business continuity and really turn resilience and business continuity into really something closer to a science, where we're actually relying on data to inform what we do and help us make better decisions in the improvement of our resilience capabilities. And that's really kind of it at the end of the day. If we can measure our capabilities, if we can measure our outcomes, if we are providing more opportunities for us to measure outcomes and then marrying that to the capabilities that we are seeing, and we're able to then illustrate this in a meaningful way to the managers and the leaders that we support within our organizations, the actions that we have to take and the improvements that we can realize start to become evident. And it becomes really a decision of, well, what actions do we want to take? What additional investments do we want to make based on what we've traditionally seen in terms of capabilities and outcomes? Let me conclude by sharing some information that may be of value to you. There is a website called adaptivebcp.org. There is a page on there that links to books and articles. The articles include both articles by myself and David and other colleagues of ours, but also there's a lot of academic research into business continuity that I think you might find of value. There is, if you're interested at all in adaptive business continuity, there's a book called Adaptive Business Continuity, A New Approach, which is available on Amazon. It's also available by Google Books and Apple. I've got the link right here if you want to follow it and get adaptive business continuity in whatever format you want to get it. And last, but certainly not least, is my contact information. So whether you agree, whether you disagree, whether you have some information to share, please reach out to me. My contact information is mnjarmour@gmail.com. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so please feel free to follow me there. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn as well. Comment on any of the articles of mine that you happen to find out there. I think any social media platform, but LinkedIn is kind of a good professional one, really for debating and discussing some of these ideas. And I certainly welcome and hope that you'll contribute to some of those discussions and debates yourself. And then finally, you can follow me on Twitter. I am at BC_revolution. I will end on that. I thank you very much for attending this session. It means a lot to me that you're going to take time out of your day to listen. And again, I certainly hope that I hear from you soon. Take care.